C41.5 is a concept in ecology that looks at carrying capacity in competition for limited resources. When we think about the carrying capacity, it's basically the maximum population size of a given species that can be supported in an environment. And there are several factors that are going to impact the carrying capacity of a given ecosystem. Some of those factors are listed here. We can see the classics: food, water, shelter, access to space. Those are density dependent factors, basically. And then we have some independent factors such as climate change and things like that. Okay, we're going to look at a list of all of these. When we look at those density dependent factors that control population size, some of these have a negative impact. So they're going to reduce or limit the population from continuing to grow. And we call that, those limiting factors typically have, again, a negative impact on population size. One of the things that you're going to have to be able to do is tell the difference between density dependent and density independent factors, and then give some examples of each. When we have these density dependent factors, in general, these tend to be biotic, right, or caused by other living things, either species, like same species, or species and other species. And again, this is going to limit the number of organisms, or the population density, the number of organisms in a given ecosystem. We're going to look at a few, including competition for resources, risk of predation, and then disease as, again, limiting factors. And these are all going to have a negative impact, sort of negative feedback on the number of organisms that can be in that given ecosystem. When we talk about competition for resources, this is from members of the same species. And hopefully it makes sense to you that members of the same species require the same resources to survive, thrive, and reproduce. So when there's only a limited amount of the resources that those individuals need, it's going to keep those numbers down. The larger the population gets, the greater the competition for those resources becomes. And in that case, now we see this tie back to evolution and natural selection, because those individuals in a population best fit, right, those best able to amass resources are more likely to survive and therefore reproduce and pass on their genetics. Another density dependent factor is risk of predation. So as populations grow in size, right, we have more prey available to predators. The greater those numbers, the greater the risks of predation. Okay, so when there's lots of prey around, then the predators show up, and if there's lots of food for the predators, then they tend to reproduce more, make more of themselves, and now we have more predators, and we have more impact on the prey populations. Okay, this is an example here. These are seals. The seal population, this happens to be Cape Cod in Massachusetts. So the seal population is legally protected, and so that population increased significantly over the last 10 to 20 years. And once the seal population started to increase, now we see predators move into the area, right? Great white sharks have moved in to the waters of Cape Cod, and now we see one of the high densities of these top-level predators swimming off the waters of Cape Cod. Another density-dependent factor is disease. So when you have lots of individuals in the same space, there's a higher risk of transmission of disease. So either through direct contact or through vectors of those diseases. And again, this could increase as you have disease impacts increase, then you would increase mortality rates, and that would have a negative impact or decrease the population. So those were all density-dependent factors. Density-independent factors, in contrast, are usually abiotic. So they don't depend on the number of organisms that are in the space. And some classic examples there are climate changes, natural disasters, volcanic eruptions. It doesn't matter how many trees are in the area when the volcanoes erupt, right? All of the animals or plants in the area are impacted by that. And then we also see habitat destruction and seasonal change as well. So the population of organisms in an ecosystem could simply change with the seasons, regardless of how many of them were there to start with. And those, again, are abiotic factors. Okay. And then this is just a graphic sort of summarizing that. Density dependent to the top, right? Again, so these again tend to be biotic, and then the density independent, abiotic, drought, right, rapid wildfires, deforestation, things like that are abiotic.